Sometimes life brings us to a doorway we didn't even know we had built. If you are here, listening right now, it isn't random. It isn't just another video in a long list of distractions. No, this is something deeper. This is what I call a quantum appointment. A meeting you scheduled with yourself long before you were aware of it. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere within the vast field of possibility, there exists a version of you that has already crossed the storm you are still walking through. That version has already found peace, where you now feel restless, clarity where you now feel uncertain, and they have been whispering to you across time, through moments of synchronicity, through gentle nudges in your heart, through quiet feelings that seemed too small to take seriously. But today, you noticed. Today, you showed up. This is not about chance. It's about resonance. When two tuning forks vibrate in the same key, one will set the other into motion without even touching it. That is what your future self is doing, now setting you into motion. And the moment you stopped resisting what is, the moment you stopped arguing with life about how it should be, that is when your frequency shifted. That was the moment you crossed into a new orbit of being. I want you to feel this in your body, not just think about it in your mind. Close your eyes, if you wish, and notice how your breath moves in and out. Notice that in this very breath, the past, the present, and the future collapse into one living now. Every possibility is alive, and the only thing that makes one real for you is the vibration you are holding. Just as a radio doesn't create the song but simply tunes to the station, your consciousness doesn't force a new reality into being, it simply aligns with it. This is why effort often feels exhausting. Many of us have been taught to push, to control, to force life into shape. But the truth is, reality doesn't respond to force, it responds to frequency. Your future self did not get to where they are by endlessly struggling against the current. They learned how to surrender to it. They stopped trying to row upstream and allowed the river to carry them. And so must you. Think of a bird in flight. It doesn't flap with desperation to force the wind into existence. It spreads its wings and trusts the air to hold it. That's what this moment is asking of you. To spread your inner wings and let the invisible intelligence that has always been guiding you do its work. You don't have to understand every detail. You don't need to see the whole map. What matters is your willingness to be carried by a greater wisdom than the small mind can grasp. And so I remind you, your future self is not far away. They are here, woven into the very fabric of your awareness right now. Every time you soften your resistance, every time you allow instead of control, every time you choose to breathe into trust rather than collapse into fear, you step closer to their vibration. Do you feel that stirring? That gentle sense that something inside you is opening, like a flower turning toward the sun. That is not imagination. It is recognition. You are remembering the truth of what has always been. You are more than this moment's worry, more than the story of your past, more than the limitations you once believed defined you. The beauty of this path is that you don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove yourself worthy. You simply need to remember. And the remembering begins here, in the quiet acceptance of what is, and in the courage to trust what is becoming. So stay with me. Stay with this unfolding, because today is not a coincidence. It is your future calling you home. 1. The future already exists. You may have spent years believing the future is something far away, something you must chase, earn, or somehow create from scratch. That's what the world often teaches us, that life is a ladder, and you must climb each rung with effort and struggle to finally reach the top. But what if the truth is softer than that? What if the future you long for isn't something you have to build brick by brick, but something that already exists, waiting for you to remember it? This might sound unusual at first, but think about memory. When you recall a childhood moment, the smell of your grandmother's kitchen, the sound of a song you loved when you were young, you don't create that memory. You simply tune into it. The experience is already there, imprinted in the fabric of your being, and your awareness retrieves it. In the same way, your future is not some empty space waiting to be filled. It's already present in the quantum field of possibility, alive and whole. You don't create it, you remember it. I know this may feel like a relief for some, and perhaps unsettling for others, because if the future is already there, then why haven't you experienced it yet? The answer lies in alignment. Imagine walking through a house at night with many rooms, each one lit, but with the doors closed. You don't have to build the rooms, they're already there. You simply need to open the right door. The future works the same way. Every possible version of you is already existing. The loving, abundant, peaceful version of you isn't waiting to be constructed. It's waiting to be remembered, to be chosen. When I was younger, I used to believe I had to fight for every good thing in life. Success felt like war. Happiness felt like something you win after you've proved yourself. But the more I lived, the more I realized that this belief itself was the very wall keeping me from peace. It wasn't that the future was far away. It was that I had blinded myself to its presence by clinging to struggle. The moment I softened, the moment I allowed myself to believe that maybe I was already enough, I felt a shift. It was like walking into a room I had always owned but never dared to enter. Your future self, the one who has already lived fully, who has already loved deeply, who has already forgiven, has been whispering to you all along. They are not some fantasy, they are a frequency. Think of them as a radio station broadcasting a song of completion. The question is not whether that song is playing, but whether you're willing to tune your dial to hear it. And tuning is not about effort. You don't twist and force the dial. You simply move it with a steady hand until the signal comes through clear. In your life, tuning means choosing peace over panic, choosing gratitude over resentment, choosing presence over regret. Each time you do, the static quiets, and the voice of your future self grows louder. What I've come to know, after stumbling through my own seasons of darkness, is that the future is never lost. Even when you've wandered far, even when you've made mistakes that left scars, even when you think you've wasted years, your future remains untouched, waiting for you, like a letter addressed to you that never stops being delivered. It waits until you are ready to open it. So perhaps today is not about creating a better life with sheer force. Perhaps it is about remembering the life that already exists for you, in the higher realms of possibility. Perhaps it is about quieting the noise long enough to hear the song that's been playing for you all along. And here's the simple but powerful truth: you don't have to fight for your future. You only have to remember it. 2. Challenges and growth. Life has a way of testing us in moments we least expect. You know those nights when the weight of everything feels too heavy, when the silence of the room seems louder than your own heartbeat. Those are the places where growth is born. And while it may seem like the universe is against you, I want you to know this: the difficulties you face are not punishments. They are invitations. They are quantum tests, asking you, will you contract into fear, or will you expand into love? I used to believe challenges were signs that I was on the wrong path. If something was hard, I thought it meant I'd made a mistake. But the older I became, the more I realized that the opposite is often true. The very obstacles I wished away turned out to be the stepping stones that carried me to deeper strength, greater compassion, and a more authentic self. Hardship is not life's way of breaking you. It's life's way of asking, who are you becoming? Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. From the outside, it looks like darkness, confinement, even death. But inside, a transformation is happening. The shell cracks open, not because something has gone wrong, but because growth demands it. The seed must break apart before the sprout can reach for the sun. And so it is with us. The pressure, the darkness, the breaking, they are not signs of your failure. They are the labor pains of your becoming. When you meet a challenge, you stand at a fork in the road. Fear will tell you to shrink, to hide, to close your heart. Love will whisper, stay open, even now. And every time you choose love, whether it's forgiving someone who hurt you or being gentle with yourself in your own mistakes, you shift your timeline. You step into a future that vibrates at a higher frequency, a future where you are more aligned with who you truly are. I've seen it in my own life. There were seasons when fear seemed to run the show. I contracted, I doubted, I blamed, and the more I did, the smaller my world became. But in the rare moments when I softened into love, even when I didn't have the answers, something miraculous happened. The walls loosened, doors I thought were sealed began to open. Life rearranged itself, not because I fought harder, but because I allowed my heart to stay open when it would have been easier to close. You see, fear is like a clenched fist. It keeps everything locked inside your energy, your vision, your possibility. Love is like an open palm. It releases, it receives, it trusts. And this isn't about pretending challenges don't hurt. They do. Sometimes they hurt more than words can say. But love doesn't mean you deny the pain. Love means you allow the pain to shape you without defining you. Love means you let the experience teach you, instead of imprison you. Imagine standing in front of a storm. The winds are howling. The rain is pouring. And you can barely see 2 feet in front of you. Fear tells you to run or fight against it. Love tells you to plant your feet, breathe, and trust that storms never last forever. Love reminds you that even the fiercest storm is moving you, clearing the air, watering the ground for new life. Every time you face hardship, remember this: you are not being asked to prove your worth. You are being asked to practice your truth, to embody the knowing that you are more than circumstances, more than fear, more than the story your mind repeats. And when you choose love in the face of struggle, you send a ripple into the quantum field. You shift the frequency of your life. You change your timeline. So the next time life tests you, pause it. Ask yourself, will I shrink back into fear, or will I expand into love? Because that single choice, repeated again and again, is what determines the path you walk. And the future you are longing for, the future where you are free and whole, is built not by avoiding challenges, but by allowing them to become gateways into a deeper love than you've ever known. 3. Gratitude as the foundational frequency. Gratitude is often spoken about as if it were just good manners, saying, thank you, counting your blessings before bed, writing down a few positive notes in a journal. And yes, those things matter. But I want you to hear this in a deeper way. Gratitude is not only an emotion, it is a frequency. When you are truly grateful, you are not just acknowledging what you see, you are broadcasting a signal that aligns you with the highest timeline available to you. Think about it like this. Every radio station is playing its own music. Some stations play fear, some play scarcity, some play resentment. And when you tune into those, the world feels heavy and closed. But gratitude is the station where the air feels lighter, where doors begin to open, where synchronicities appear like gentle breadcrumbs on your path. It is the key that unlocks doors you once thought were sealed shut. I know this not because I read it in a book, but because life forced me to learn it. There were seasons when I lost more than I thought I could bear, people I loved, opportunities I counted on, even the sense of who I was. In those moments, gratitude felt impossible. How could I be thankful when everything seemed to be falling apart? But it was precisely in those moments, when I was on my knees, that gratitude became something more than a polite word. It became a lifeline, not gratitude for the loss itself, but gratitude that I could still breathe, that I could still notice the way the sun rose faithfully each morning, that even in my brokenness, there was still beauty moving quietly through the world. That simple practice shifted everything. Gratitude didn't erase my pain, but it lifted me into a frequency where pain no longer defined me. It was like opening a window in a dark room. Light didn't remove the walls, but it revealed that I was not trapped. Suddenly, I could see possibilities again. I could see that life was not finished with me. Gratitude was the password, the code that reconnected me to the greater intelligence of the universe. You see, when you are grateful, you are not begging life to give you more. You are declaring that you already belong to the flow of abundance, that you are already connected to the source of love and support. Gratitude says, I see the gift, even if it's still wrapped in difficulty. Gratitude says, I trust that even this moment, with its imperfections, is part of a larger harmony, and life responds to that signal in ways logic could never predict. Think of the times when you felt truly grateful. Maybe it was watching your child sleep peacefully. Maybe it was hearing laughter after a season of silence. Maybe it was as simple as feeling the warmth of a cup of tea on a cold morning. In those moments, you weren't striving. You weren't forcing. You weren't chasing. You were present. And in that presence, you were wealthy. Wealthy not in possessions, but in being. That is the essence of gratitude. The realization that you already stand in the flow of enough. Gratitude also changes the way we see challenges. A closed door, when seen with resentment, feels like rejection. But with gratitude, that same door becomes protection, redirection, preparation. Gratitude doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It means trusting that everything is meaningful, and when you live with that trust, the universe seems to rearrange itself in your favor. I often tell people that gratitude is like a compass. When you lose your way, don't rush. Don't panic. Just pause and ask, what in this moment can I give thanks for? It might be something small, something ordinary, but that act of noticing, of appreciating, shifts your inner frequency. And the moment you shift, the path forward begins to reveal itself. So if you want to unlock the highest timeline of your life, begin here. Not with striving, not with pushing, but with gratitude. Because gratitude is not just saying thank you. It is a state of being that whispers to the universe, I am ready. I see the gift. I trust the process. And the universe, always listening, always responsive, says in return here, take more of what you are ready to see. Gratitude is the foundation. It is the frequency upon which every other transformation is built. And the moment you live from it, not just think about it, but embody it, you find that the doors you thought were locked were never locked at all. They were waiting for you to carry the key of gratitude in your heart. 4. Creativity and presence. There's a common belief that creativity belongs to a select few painters, musicians, poets, inventors. We think of it as something we do, as if we must pick up a brush, sit at a piano, or write a masterpiece in order to call ourselves creative. But what if creativity is not an activity? What if it is your very essence? The truth is, you don't have to do creativity. You are creativity. Every breath you take, every thought that passes through you, every act of kindness you offer to another is part of the grand expression of life moving through you. Creativity is not separate from you. It is the fabric of your being. You were born of it, shaped by it, and you continue to breathe it out into the world, whether you notice it or not. I came to understand this not in the moments when I was making something, but in the quiet hours of ordinary life, washing dishes at the sink. I noticed how the water caught the light, scattering tiny rainbows across the surface. That was creativity. Sitting with someone in silence, holding their hand when there were no words to ease their pain. That was creativity. Cooking a simple meal, laughing at a small joke, tending to a plant, all of it, when met with presence, became a song of the universe. Creativity is the natural flow of life. It is the river moving effortlessly to the sea. But we often dam the river with our thoughts. I'm not good enough. I'm not talented enough. I need to prove myself. In that striving, we lose touch with what was already flowing freely. The secret isn't to try harder, it's to get out of the way. To let life move through you as it was meant to. Presence is the doorway to this truth. When you are present, fully in the moment, you dissolve the illusion that you must become creative. Instead, you realize you already are. Presence transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. A smile offered without distraction becomes art. A deep breath taken in gratitude becomes poetry. A gentle word spoken at the right time becomes music. I remember once, during a very dark season of my life, I felt completely empty. Nothing I did seemed to matter. I thought creativity had abandoned me. But one evening, I stepped outside and watched the sunset. For the first time in weeks, I didn't analyze, didn't try to capture the moment. I didn't try to make anything of it. I simply sat there, and as the sky shifted from gold to purple to deep indigo, I felt something shift inside me. That simple act of witnessing, of being present, was pure creation. I wasn't adding to the sunset, I was part of it. The experience itself was art. This is what I mean when I say you are creativity. You don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. You don't have to chase after ideas. All that is required is to arrive here. Now, to breathe, to notice, to allow. Life itself will create through you in ways you could never plan. Think of a child at play. They don't sit and wonder if they are creative enough. They simply play, without judgment, without fear. They build castles from sand, tell stories with toys, draw shapes in the dirt. Their presence makes everything alive. That is the purity of creativity, the innocent flow of being here fully. So, I invite you to see your life differently. When you prepare a meal, do it with presence and notice the colors, the textures, the fragrance. When you speak to someone, do it with presence and notice the rhythm of your words, the way they land in the silence between you. When you take a walk, do it with presence and notice how the wind itself is composing a song in the trees. You don't have to strive to create you only have to be. And in your being, everything becomes art. The universe doesn't measure your creativity by achievements or applause. It measures it by the depth of your presence, by the authenticity of your expression, by the love that flows through the small moments of your life. When you live this way, every day becomes a canvas. Every moment, a brushstroke. Every breath, a verse in the song of existence. So remember, you are not separate from creativity. You are its living embodiment. And when you bring your full presence into the now, even the smallest act becomes a hymn of the universe, reminding you that life itself is the greatest masterpiece, and you are part of its endless unfolding. 5. Forgiveness and healing. Forgiveness is one of the hardest words for many of us to hold in our hearts. It feels heavy, almost impossible at times, because we think forgiveness means pretending the pain never happened, or excusing the actions that left us wounded. But forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about changing your relationship to it. It's about releasing yourself from the grip of old timelines, so your spirit can finally breathe free again. For years, I misunderstood forgiveness. I thought it meant letting someone off the hook, as if their actions no longer mattered. But I learned through my own scars that forgiveness is not about them. It's about me. It's about you. It's about reclaiming the energy that has been locked up in old stories of betrayal, anger, and regret. Every time we hold on to resentment, we are replaying the same old frequency, anchoring ourselves to a timeline where the wound is still fresh. And the truth is, we deserve better than to live in that repetition. Think of forgiveness as unclenching a fist that's been tight for too long. When you hold anger, your whole body contracts. The muscles tighten. The breath shortens. The heart hardens. You think you're holding on to the past to protect yourself. But really, it is holding on to you. And the longer you cling, the heavier it becomes. But the moment you begin to open your hand, the moment you soften, there is space again. Space for love. Space for peace. Space for new life. I remember carrying a resentment for many years. It was like a stone in my chest. Something I dragged into every new relationship, every new season. And the strange thing was, the person who had hurt me wasn't carrying it anymore. They had moved on. I was the one who stayed behind, anchored to a story that no longer needed to define me. The day I truly forgave, not because they asked for it, not because they deserved it, but because I was tired of carrying the stone, that was the day I felt lighter. The past didn't vanish, but my relationship with it transformed. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite history. It rewires your heart. It allows you to look back without being pulled back. It lets you see the pain, but also the wisdom it carried, the strength it gave you, the compassion it carved into your being. Without forgiveness, the wound remains an open loop, replaying itself. With forgiveness, the loop closes, and the energy that was trapped there returns to you, renewed. And it's not only about forgiving others. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. We carry guilt for choices we made, for words we said, for paths we took that we now regret. We look back and say, I should have known better. But here's the truth: you couldn't have known better until you lived through it. You couldn't have chosen differently without the perspective that only comes after. Beating yourself for the past is like punishing a child for not yet knowing what an adult knows. Forgiveness says, I release myself from that weight. I honor the journey that brought me here. Healing happens in that release. Not because the scar is gone, but because the scar no longer aches. It becomes part of your story without being the whole story. Forgiveness is the medicine that loosens the chains of resentment, and when those chains fall, you no longer live in yesterday's timeline. You step into a new one, lighter, freer, more open to love. So if there's something or someone you've been holding on to, even if that someone is you, consider this. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about remembering differently. It's about saying, this happened, but it no longer has the power to define me. The old timeline dissolves the moment you choose to forgive, and in that space, a new possibility emerges. One where you are no longer a prisoner of what was, but a creator of what is. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others. It is a gift you give yourself. It is the quiet key that unlocks the door you thought you could never walk through. And when you step through it, you discover that healing was waiting for you all along. 6. The power of consciousness. Most of us were raised to believe that life happens to us, that reality is fixed, and we are just witnesses to whatever comes. We're taught to endure, to adapt, to survive within the boundaries that seem unmovable. But there comes a moment, a quiet, almost sacred moment, when you begin to see the cracks in that story. You begin to notice how your inner world shapes your outer one. And slowly, you realize that consciousness is not merely an observer of life. It is the author of it. Every thought you think, every emotion you allow, every belief you carry, it all ripples outward. Like stones dropped into a still pond, they create waves that touch every shore of your experience. Most of the time, we're not even aware of the stones we're tossing. We repeat old thoughts, replay old feelings, recycle old beliefs, and then wonder why life looks the same year after year. But reality isn't punishing us. It's simply reflecting us. I learned this truth the hard way. There was a period in my life when I was constantly focused on lack, what I didn't have, what wasn't working, who had let me down. And sure enough, everywhere I looked, life seemed to echo those feelings back to me. I met people who confirmed my doubts. Opportunities slipped away. Even my body carried the weight of that energy. It was as though the universe had placed a mirror in front of me, saying, "This is what you are projecting. This is what you are choosing." Then something shifted, not in an instant, but in small, almost invisible ways. I started catching my thoughts before they spiraled. I asked myself, what am I broadcasting right now? What station am I tuned into? And little by little, I learned that when my thoughts, emotions, and beliefs lined up in harmony, life itself began to rearrange around me. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. Think of it like tuning an instrument. A single string vibrating out of tune creates noise, but when every string is in harmony, the sound becomes music. Your consciousness works the same way. If your thoughts crave abundance, but your emotions vibrate with fear, and your actions are driven by doubt, you create interference. The waves cancel each other out. But when thought, emotion, and belief all align with truth, when they resonate together, the universe amplifies that signal, and reality echoes it back with clarity. Presence is the first step. When you are present, you begin to notice the unconscious patterns you've been living on, the quiet doubt, the buried fears, the limiting stories you inherited but never questioned. Awareness brings them into the light, and in that light, you finally have a choice. You can continue to project the same old patterns, or you can begin to author a new chapter. This doesn't mean you must think positive all the time. Life is far richer than forced optimism. What it means is that you become intentional about what you allow to take root within you. A single thought of trust, deep felt, a moment of gratitude, truly embodied, a belief that says, "I am supported, even here." These simple shifts ripple far beyond what the eye can see. I've witnessed it countless times. Someone who believes they are unworthy will unconsciously choose relationships that confirm that story. Someone who holds the belief that life is generous will notice doors opening where others see only walls. Consciousness calls forth matching experiences, not as a reward or punishment, but as resonance. The world is the echo of your inner song. So the question becomes, what song are you singing? What frequency are you allowing your consciousness to broadcast? Are you aligned with fear, scarcity, and resistance, or with trust, abundance, and love? When you recognize that consciousness is the author, you stop waiting for reality to change. Before you feel peace, you begin with peace. You live from peace, and then reality responds. This is not about control. It's about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs stand together like a choir, singing one melody, reality harmonizes with them. And in that harmony, life begins to reflect the truth of who you really are, not a powerless observer, but a creator. So take a breath, notice what you are broadcasting, and remember, consciousness doesn't just witness your life, it writes it, one thought, one emotion, one belief at a time. 7. Abundance. We often grow up believing that abundance is measured by how much we can collect more money, more possessions, more recognition. The world around us feeds this belief at every turn, whispering that happiness lies in accumulation. But after years of chasing, after years of running faster and holding tighter, many of us discover a quiet, painful truth: the more we have, the emptier we sometimes feel. That is because abundance is not about adding, it is about becoming. True abundance begins inside. It isn't the weight of gold in your pocket or the number of keys on your ring. It's the state of your being. When you know, deep in your bones, that you are already whole, already enough, already connected to the infinite flow of life, then the world outside becomes a mirror, reflecting that truth back to you in countless ways. I learned this lesson slowly, and not without resistance. There was a time when I thought freedom meant financial security alone. If only I could earn more, save more, build more, then I would finally be at peace. But the more I chased, the further peace seemed to slip away, because I was living from scarcity. Scarcity isn't just about not having enough, it's about not being enough. And when you live in that story, no amount of accumulation will fill the space. But something shifted when I began to see abundance as a consciousness rather than a condition. I started small by noticing what I already had. Not in numbers, but in essence. A roof to sleep under, a friend who listened, a sunrise that cost nothing, but gave everything. The more I acknowledged these gifts, the more abundant I felt. And strangely, the more abundance seemed to find me. Opportunities appeared where there had been none. Support arrived when I thought I was alone. It was as though life was echoing back the frequency I was broadcasting. Abundance is a presence, not a possession. It shows up in the way you breathe, without rushing. In the way you give without keeping score. In the way you trust that life is generous, even when the evidence isn't obvious yet. Living in abundance consciousness is like standing in front of a mirror. You smile, and the reflection smiles back. But you must smile first. And this kind of wealth is not limited to material things. There is emotional abundance, the capacity to love without rationing, to forgive without bargaining. There is mental abundance where your thoughts expand into creativity rather than contract into fear. There is spiritual abundance, the deep knowing that you are not separate from life, but an expression of its endless flow. You see, abundance is not about filling your hands. It's about opening them. An open hand can give, but it can also receive. And when you live from that openness, life begins to place gifts into your palm, often in forms you never expected. I remember once sitting with an elderly man who had very little by worldly standards. His house was small, his income modest, his possessions few. But as he spoke, I felt something I rarely felt. In rooms filled with wealth, peace. He laughed easily, he shared generously, and he spoke of his days with gratitude. He had discovered what so many of us overlook: abundance is not a matter of more, but of enough. And when you live in the state of enough, everything becomes more than enough. So if you find yourself longing for abundance, pause. Ask yourself not, how can I get more, but how can I become more present, more grateful, more trusting, more aligned with the truth that you are already connected to the source of life itself. Because when you live from that place, the outer world reflects it back. Doors open, people appear, life rearranges. Abundance is not waiting for you somewhere far away. It's already inside you, quietly echoing, "You are enough." And the moment you believe it, the world cannot help but mirror it back. 8. Stillness as the supreme technology. We live in a world that glorifies movement. Do more, achieve more, fill every moment with noise, distraction, or action. And yet, for all that rushing, many of us feel further from peace than ever. It's almost as if the harder we chase, the more elusive life becomes. But here is a paradox I discovered after many years of trying to fix myself, trying to force answers, trying to push my way through. The deepest breakthroughs do not come from effort, they come from stillness. Stillness is not emptiness. It is not laziness. It is not doing nothing in despair. Stillness is the fertile ground where the most profound shifts occur. It is the quiet space where the mind stops running in circles long enough for the truth to whisper through. In stillness, and the brain, this incredible instrument of ours, becomes less like a computer processing endless noise and more like an antenna. A quantum antenna. It begins to pick up signals that were always present, but drowned out by the static of constant thought. I remember one of the hardest seasons of my life. When everything seemed to be unraveling, I tried every method to find control lists, strategies, conversations, even bargaining with life itself. Nothing worked. The more I tried to bend reality, the heavier it pressed back against me. One evening, exhausted, I simply stopped. I sat in silence. No plan, no agenda. Just me and my breath. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't demanding that life change. I was simply still, and in that stillness, something unexpected happened. I felt a presence, not outside of me, but within me, a sense of calm that didn't come from solving a problem, but from touching something larger than the problem itself. That was when I understood stillness is not about escaping reality. It is about tuning into the highest frequency of it. You don't need to beg the universe for answers. You don't need to force alignment. When you rest in stillness, the highest frequency comes to you. It seeks you because you are no longer pushing it away with noise and resistance. Think of stillness like tuning a radio. When there's too much static, the music is lost. But the moment you stop turning the dial frantically and let it settle, the station comes in clear. That's how stillness works. The signal of your truest self has always been broadcasting. You've just been too busy spinning the dial to hear it. And this doesn't require hours of meditation on a mountaintop. It can be as simple as pausing for 3 breaths before you speak, sitting quietly in your car before walking into work, lying in bed, and letting your body feel supported by the mattress instead of scrolling through your phone. Stillness is not a place. It is a posture, a willingness to stop running and simply listen. When you enter that state, something remarkable happens. Your nervous system recalibrates. Your thoughts slow down, and in that quiet space, insights appear that you could never think your way into. You begin to feel the presence of your future self, the whole, abundant, fearless version of you, because stillness is the bridge that connects you to them. So often, we think we must climb a ladder to reach our highest self, but stillness reveals that there is no ladder at all. The future you are seeking is not higher, farther, or hidden. It is already here. Stillness is the doorway that dissolves the illusion of distance. I cannot promise that stillness will erase all problems. Life will still bring its storms, but what stillness does is give you the strength to face those storms without being shattered by them. It grounds you in something larger than fear. It tunes you to a frequency where solutions emerge naturally, not through force, but through clarity. So if you feel lost, if you feel exhausted from striving, I invite you to stop just for a moment. Let yourself be still. Let yourself remember that you are not separate from the intelligence of the universe. You are a living part of it. And when you rest in that truth, the highest frequencies don't need to be chased. They find you, because in stillness, you are already aligned. 9. Awareness and choice. There comes a moment in life when you realize that the biggest shifts don't happen in dramatic events. They happen quietly, in the choices you make when no one else is watching, in the silence of your own heart, in the space between one breath and the next. That is where awareness lives. And that is where choice, the most powerful tool you will ever have, comes alive. Most of us drift through our days on autopilot. We react to circumstances, repeat the same old patterns, fall into the same familiar fears, and without realizing it, we create the same outcomes again and again. Life becomes a loop, not because we are destined to suffer, but because we haven't yet recognized the creative power hidden in each moment. Every moment asks us, will you choose fear, or will you choose love? Will you stay asleep, or will you wake up? I remember seasons in my life when I was numb, simply going through the motions. The alarm clock rang. I went to work. I spoke words that didn't come from my heart. And at night, I collapsed into bed without ever asking myself, was I really alive today? It wasn't until life handed me a crisis, a loss that shook me awake, that I began to understand how fragile and precious each moment truly is. That was when I saw the truth I had been living by default, not by design. Awareness is the key that unlocks that prison. When you become aware, even for a split second, you step outside the loop. You see your thoughts instead of being trapped inside them. You notice your fear without letting it dictate your action. You hear the whisper of love even when the noise of worry is louder. That pause, that noticing, is the beginning of freedom. And then comes choice. The choice to answer life differently than you have before. Maybe the fear is still there. It probably will be. But in awareness, you realize you are not the fear. You are the one who chooses how to respond to it. You can choose to soften instead of harden, to speak truth instead of hide, to forgive instead of cling to bitterness. These choices may seem small, but don't be fooled. Small choices are what bend entire timelines. It's like standing at a crossroads where one path leads deeper into the same old story, and the other leads into a new possibility. You may not see the entire road ahead, but by choosing love, by choosing presence, you take the first step onto that higher path. And once you've taken one step, the road itself begins to reveal more of its beauty. I've learned that choosing love over fear doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a breath before reacting in anger. Sometimes it's listening fully when someone speaks, instead of planning your reply. Sometimes it's offering yourself kindness after years of harsh self-criticism. These are not small acts. They are quantum acts. Each one shifts the frequency of your being, and in doing so, shifts the reality you experience. Think of a musician tuning an instrument. A single note may not seem like much, but it changes the entire harmony of the song. In the same way, each choice of love over fear, presence over autopilot, shifts the harmony of your life. And little by little, those shifts create a new melody, a new timeline where peace, clarity, and abundance become your natural environment. Awareness and choice are the quiet powers that shape your destiny. They don't require you to control the future or rewrite the past. They ask only that you wake up to the now, because in the now, you are free. Free to choose love, free to choose presence, free to step out of the old timeline and into the one your heart has been longing for. So the next time life places you in a familiar moment, pause, notice, ask yourself, what am I choosing right now? Am I choosing fear, or am I choosing love? Am I lost in autopilot, or am I awake in presence? Because in that single question lies the power to change everything. And when you practice this again and again, you will discover that your life has transformed not through force, but through the quiet miracle of awareness and choice. 10. Quantum faith. Faith is a word we often misunderstand. To many, it sounds like blind belief, closing your eyes and hoping that somehow life will work out in your favor. But true faith, the kind that transforms your experience, is not blind at all. It is not naive. It is a quiet knowing that while you may not see the entire map, the path will appear as you walk. It is not ignorance of reality, but trust in a deeper reality, the one that runs beneath appearances. Quantum faith is the recognition that you do not need to control the how. You don't need to calculate every detail, predict every outcome, or force every circumstance into place. Your responsibility is simpler to know what you desire and why it matters to you. The rest, the how, belongs to life itself. The universe has a way of drawing the lines between the dots when you hold your vision steady and your heart clear. I used to live in constant anxiety about the how. How will I pay the bills? How will this relationship survive? How will I find the strength to keep going? And the more I obsessed over the how, the smaller my life became. It was like trying to walk forward while staring only at my feet. I missed the horizon. I missed the bigger picture. And the truth was, most of the hows I spent nights worrying about never unfolded the way I imagined anyway. Life had its own design. Quantum faith is learning to lift your eyes, to say, I may not know how the road will twist and turn, but I know where my heart is pointing, and I know why it matters. When you hold on to that clarity, life responds. Paths appear, not through force, but through alignment. People enter your journey at just the right time. Opportunities surface that your logical mind could never have predicted. It feels like coincidence, but it isn't. It's resonance. Think of it like planting a seed. When you place it in the soil, you don't stand over it, demanding to know how each cell will divide, how the roots will find water, how the stem will push through the dirt. You simply know what you planted and why. You water it, you give it light, and you trust the intelligence of life to handle the rest. That is quantum faith. It's not blind, it's partnership. You do your part, and the universe does its part. And this doesn't mean you sit back and wait passively. Faith is active, but not frantic. It calls you to take inspired steps when they appear. Even if they seem small or uncertain, it asks you to show up with integrity, with openness, with courage. But it frees you from the suffocating need to control every variable. It reminds you that the river knows where it's going. You only need to stay in the flow. I remember once facing a situation that felt impossible. Every plan I tried failed. Every effort left me exhausted. Finally, in my surrender, I whispered to myself, I don't know how, but I know why. I don't know how, but I know what. That shift changed everything. Within days, help came from places I never expected. The solution wasn't what I had pictured, but it was exactly what I needed. That is the mystery of quantum faith. It doesn't give you what your mind clings to. It gives you what your soul has been asking for all along. So if you feel trapped by uncertainty, if you're exhausted from trying to figure out the how, take a breath. Let yourself rest in the knowing of your what and your why. What do you truly long for? Why does it matter to you? Hold that. Nourish that. Speak it. Live it. And then allow life to sketch the path in its own way. Quantum faith is not about abandoning reason. It's about realizing that reason alone cannot hold the vast intelligence of the universe. It's about trusting that what you desire, when rooted in love and truth, already exists in potential, and life is moving to meet you halfway. So walk forward, not in blindness, but in trust. You don't need to know the mechanics of every miracle. You only need to keep your eyes on the horizon, your heart steady in its why, and your spirit open to receive. The universe will draw the path. 11. Purpose and intuition. For much of my life, I thought purpose was something out there waiting for me, like a hidden treasure buried under the weight of years. I thought if I searched hard enough, read enough, worked enough, or proved myself enough, I might finally stumble upon it. And in that discovery, I imagined everything would fall into place. But life taught me differently. Purpose is not a distant mission you must chase. It is not something you find. Purpose is the frequency you live in. Here and now. Think of it like music. You don't search for the song in another room. You become part of the rhythm in this one. Purpose works the same way. It isn't about uncovering one grand assignment stamped across your life. It's about living each moment in such alignment with your true self that even the smallest actions carry the sound of authenticity. When I realized this, the weight on my shoulders began to lift. I didn't need to wait for a grand revelation to start living meaningfully. My purpose wasn't hidden in some distant future. It was present in how I greeted the day, how I treated people, how I cared for myself, and how I responded to the world around me. My purpose was not out there. It was in here. But how do we know if we are aligned with that frequency? How do we sense when we are living in tune with our purpose? That's where intuition comes in. Intuition is often mistaken for a loud, mystical voice. But most of the time it arrives as something quiet, a nudge, a whisper, a subtle pull. It doesn't shout, it invites, it doesn't push, it guides. I remember a time when I ignored that whisper. My mind was loud, full of plans and logic, insisting on a certain path, but something in my chest felt heavy, like I was walking against the current. I brushed it off as fear, or doubt, or weakness. Later, when everything I forced began to crumble, I remembered that earlier whisper. It had been right all along. That's the thing about intuition. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't demand. It waits patiently until you are ready to listen. And when you do, the road ahead may not suddenly become easy, but it will feel true. The steps may still be difficult, but they will carry a strange lightness, as though life itself is walking with you. Your purpose and your intuition are woven together. Purpose is the frequency. Intuition is the navigation system. Purpose asks, am I living in truth, in love, in authenticity? Intuition answers. This way, keep going. When you honor that partnership, life begins to open. Think of a sailor at sea. The ocean is vast, the horizon endless. Without a compass, he could drift forever. Intuition is that compass. It doesn't give you the entire map. It gives you the next direction. The subtle shift of the sail that keeps you aligned with the wind. Purpose is the wind itself, the energy that carries you forward when you trust it. And what's important is this: your purpose doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to be grand or impressive. It doesn't have to change the entire world. Sometimes purpose is raising a child with love. Sometimes it's listening to someone who feels unseen. Sometimes it's planting a tree, or writing a letter, or simply choosing kindness in a moment of anger. Each act, when aligned with the frequency of your true self, is sacred. So if you've been searching tirelessly for your one true purpose, I invite you to stop searching and start listening. Listen to the quiet voice inside that tells you what feels honest, what feels alive, what feels like love. That is your direction. That is your purpose. Alive in this very moment. Your purpose is not a goal at the end of the road. It is the way you walk the road itself. And your intuition, small, subtle, and clear, is the lamp that lights your steps. Trust it, and you will find that you have been on your path all along. 12. Synchronicity and Coincidence. There comes a moment in life when you notice a pattern forming around you. A phone call from a friend you were just thinking about. A book falling into your hands that answers the very question you've been wrestling with. A chance meeting that opens the exact door you needed to walk through. For years, I brushed these moments aside, labeling them as coincidences, accidents of timing. But as I grew older and a little wiser, I realized these moments were anything but random. They were threads of a larger fabric, signals of an unseen harmony weaving through my life. Synchronicity, as some call it, is not the universe throwing dice. It is the universe responding to the frequency you are living in. When your inner world changes, when you release old fears, when you open your heart, when you step into a new state of being, the outer world rearranges itself to reflect that. The people, the opportunities, the events that arrive are not here by mistake. They are here because your signal has shifted, and life is simply answering back. I remember a season when I felt lost, carrying the heavy weight of old disappointments. Everything seemed gray, and the future felt like a locked door. Then, one morning, I made a quiet choice. Instead of replaying my regrets, I would focus on what I was grateful for. It was not a loud declaration, just a soft whisper inside. Yet within days, small shifts began to appear. A stranger offered a kindness at the grocery store. An old friend reached out unexpectedly. A job opportunity opened in the exact area I had secretly longed to work in. At first, I thought, what are the chances? But the truth was clear: these were not chances. These were responses. When you change the frequency of your inner life, the outer life cannot help but respond. Think of it like tuning a radio. If you're tuned to static, all you hear is noise. But when you shift the dial, suddenly, the music becomes clear. The music was always there. You just weren't tuned to it. Synchronicity works the same way. Life was always offering opportunities, but it wasn't until I tuned my inner dial that I could hear and see them. And here's the simple truth. Synchronicity is not about control. You cannot force it, schedule it, or demand it. It is about alignment. The more you live in alignment with your values, with love, with gratitude, the more these right time moments begin to flow. And the more they flow, the less you believe in luck, and the more you trust in rhythm. But let me be honest, there will still be times when things don't line up, when doors close, when people leave, when opportunities pass by. In those moments, it's easy to think, the universe has forgotten me. But I've learned that even the no's are part of the larger orchestration. Sometimes, what doesn't arrive is just as meaningful as what does. Sometimes, the absence of something clears the way for the right thing to arrive. Looking back, I see how many closed doors were actually forms of protection. Synchronicity is life's way of reminding us that we are not wandering alone, that there is a conversation happening between our inner world and the outer one, between our choices and the field of life itself. The more present we are, the more we notice the conversation, and the more we notice, the less we doubt. So when you begin to see these patterns, when life begins to echo, your inner changes, don't brush them off as coincidence. Pause. Breathe. Recognize them for what they are: confirmations. They are the universe whispering back, I heard you. I see you. Keep going. And in that recognition, something shifts. You stop feeling like life is happening to you, and you begin to see that life is happening with you. Every aligned thought, every open-hearted action, every quiet step in the direction of love sends out a signal. And sooner or later, that signal comes back as the right person, the right opportunity, the right moment arriving. Not a minute too early or too late, but exactly when you are ready. That is synchronicity. Not magic, not chance, but the deep conversation between your inner frequency and the universe's faithful response. 13. Inner change, outer change. For so long, I believed life would finally feel different once the world outside of me shifted. I thought, if I just get the right job, the right partner, the right opportunity, then I'll feel peace. Then I'll feel whole. Maybe you've thought that too, that the next milestone, the next achievement, the next possession would be the turning point. But life has a way of humbling us. You reach the milestone, and while there may be a moment of joy, the old emptiness eventually seeps back in. That's because reality doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being. Want is often born out of lack. When you say, I want more money, the signal beneath it might be, I don't have enough. When you say, I want love, the unspoken frequency might be, I am unworthy. And so, even while you're reaching outward, your inner state is sending a different message. A message the universe always hears more clearly than your words. Reality is like a mirror. It cannot reflect back an image that isn't already present. I learned this truth the hard way. In a season of my life when I was constantly chasing, I found that every door I knocked on seemed to remain shut. I blamed fate, circumstances, even other people. But eventually, I realized the world wasn't punishing me, it was echoing me. My inner state was restless, doubtful, consumed with scarcity. And so, my outer reality kept rearranging itself to match that vibration. The turning point came not when I tried harder to control the outside, but when I surrendered to the inside. I began to ask myself hard questions. Who am I being when no one is watching? Am I living in fear or in trust? Am I embodying gratitude or am I rehearsing disappointment? The answers weren't always pleasant, but they were honest. And honesty became the soil where transformation could take root. When you shift your inner world, even slightly, something remarkable happens. The people you meet begin to change. Conversations feel lighter. Opportunities that once felt hidden begin to surface. It's not because the universe suddenly noticed you. It's because you became aligned with what was already waiting for you. You tuned your frequency, and the world responded by rearranging itself around that new signal. Think of a seed planted in the earth. You don't force it to grow by shouting at the soil. You tend to it, water it, ensure it has light, and trust the unseen process unfolding beneath the surface. Then one day, without warning, a sprout breaks through. That's how inner change works. When you nourish your inner world with truth, compassion, and presence, the external begins to shift, not instantly, but inevitably. And here's the paradox: the moment you stop demanding the outside world to change, and instead choose to change yourself, the outside finally does. It's as if reality has been waiting all along, poised to mirror back the version of you that you're willing to become. I won't pretend this is easy. Facing yourself requires courage. It's far simpler to point to the world and say, "You need to change for me to be happy." But happiness born from outside conditions will always be fragile. Lasting peace, lasting abundance, lasting love, they only come when you embody them first. Not as a performance, not as a mask, but as a genuine inner shift. So if you find yourself stuck, if it feels like life refuses to move, pause, look inward. Ask yourself, am I carrying the frequency of the life I desire? Or am I still broadcasting fear, doubt, or scarcity? This kind of self-inquiry is not self-blame, it is self-empowerment. Because once you recognize what you're radiating, you can choose again. You can shift your inner state. And in time, the world will echo it back. I have seen this in my own life, again and again. When I softened into gratitude, more reasons for gratitude appeared. When I chose to embody love, even imperfectly, love showed up in unexpected places. When I decided to live from abundance rather than lack, doors that had long been closed began to open. The world was not against me. It was waiting for me to align. Reality is not some distant judge handing down rewards or punishments. It is a faithful mirror, reflecting back who you are being in this moment. And when you choose to change within, even if no one else sees it yet, the outer world begins its quiet, inevitable rearrangement. That is the real secret: not chasing, not forcing, not begging the outside to bend, but becoming within the very state you long to see without. Change yourself, and the world cannot help but follow. You have always been the answer, and now, just pause for a moment. Let yourself breathe slow, steady, unhurried. Feel the way the breath moves in and out, reminding you that life itself has always been closer than your thoughts. The future you've been searching for, the peace and fulfillment you've been chasing, was never out there in some far-off horizon. It has always been here, quietly waiting in the present, waiting for you to lay down the old stories, to release the burden of trying to fit into roles that were never truly yours, to stop shrinking yourself so others could feel comfortable. The truth is this: you are not just a witness to life unfolding. You are not merely an observer of fate's design. You are a creator. Every choice, every breath, every thought radiates into the fabric of reality and leaves an imprint. You may not always see the results instantly, but they gather like seeds in the soil, waiting for the right season to bloom. That is your quiet power, the kind that doesn't demand recognition, but transforms everything it touches. Awakening is not about escaping this human life. It is not about rising above the messiness of being human. True awakening is learning to live fully within it, to embrace the mundane as sacred, to see the divine, not in grand gestures, but in the smallest of moments. It's in the way you listen to a child's laughter, It's in the kindness of a word spoken at the right time. It's in the courage to forgive yourself when you fall short. When you begin to recognize that Spirit breathes through even the simplest actions, washing a dish, walking down a street, saying goodnight, you realize you were never separate from the sacred in the first place. The future is not some vague tomorrow you have to strive toward. It isn't locked behind years of waiting or endless effort. It is opening right here, right now, in this breath, in this decision, in this very moment of awareness. When you choose to live as if you are already whole, already worthy, already enough, something extraordinary happens. The highest timeline, the most radiant version of your life, begins in that instant. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you stepped into the truth of who you are. And the truth is, you have always been more than enough. The love you've been seeking, the abundance you've been chasing, the meaning you've been yearning for, they were never missing. They were simply waiting for you to recognize them within yourself. The world can mirror back only what you're willing to embody. When you choose to live from love instead of fear, from abundance instead of lack, from presence instead of distraction, life responds in kind. The doors that seemed locked begin to open. The opportunities you once thought impossible begin to emerge, not by accident, but by alignment. So here, at this moment, the invitation is simple. Stop searching for the answer as if it's hidden somewhere else. You don't need to run farther, try harder, or chase longer, because you, as you are right now, have always been the answer. The journey has never been about becoming something you are not, but about remembering what you already are. Maybe you've walked through shadows, through seasons of loss, through moments where hope felt thin. I know that path. I've walked it too. But even in the darkest valleys, the light within you never left. It might have flickered. It might have felt distant, but it was never extinguished. And now, as you breathe, as you choose, you have the chance to step fully into that light. Not someday, not when everything is perfect, but here, in this imperfect, beautiful, ordinary moment. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be, with everything you need already inside you. So breathe again. Slower this time. Feel the weight lift just a little. Recognize that the future you long for begins not in some distant tomorrow, but right here, in the way you choose to see yourself, in the way you choose to live this very day. Because the highest timeline doesn't start with a miracle outside of you. It starts the moment you remember the miracle within you. And from this moment forward, you don't need to search any longer. For you, all along, have been the answer.